Ever been in a maze? Yeah, we've been in a couple of them. They're a lot of fun. At least they're a lot of fun for the person who made them. Sometimes they're not so much fun for the people who are trying to get out of them. And I think part of the reason for that is because life is a lot like a maze. You know, you think there's got to be a way to solve this, and you know what it is. And if you get one on a piece of paper, the way you work it, you start in the middle. You know, try to work your way out from the middle. You know, that's easier. Or you try to get some kind of a designer view perspective on it, you know, something like this. Well, it's not enough of a picture for that. We were in New York City over the last weekend, and one of the things I love about where our school is, we're only a couple hours away from New York, and New York City is a maze, in case you've not been there. But I got an app for my phone, a transit app, and all I got to do is pull that thing up and put in the address where I want to go, and it'll give me 5 or 6 options on how to get there. You know, do I want to go by bus or by subway or, you know, get a city bike or something like that. It'll tell me how to get from A to B, and it always works. Okay, always works as long as the phone works. And it gives me a lot more confidence because before there was that app, I go to New York and I didn't know this. There's 5 subway lines coming through this station. Which one am I supposed to have? And am I supposed to be on that side of the station or this side of the station? Which one, you know, and I didn't know. But because I had that perspective, it gave me something that I needed. Well, life doesn't always come that way. And so what I want to do this morning is I want to put you inside somebody else's brain and life in Exodus chapter 14. And I want you, we're just praying about finishing the semester well. I want you to think through what God might have for us when he puts us into a situation where we simply don't have all the answers that we think we should have or want to have or even deserve. I mean, you wind up getting paralyzed in the process here. So God has a plan for us when we don't have a clue. Exodus 14. Just after a great time for Israel. I mean, they'd been through the 10 plagues. They are watching the Egyptian gods, you know, because each one of the plagues is directed against the Egyptian gods. They're watching the Egyptian gods get beat up, you know, 1 through 10. And finally, this tremendous, the 10th plague, the horrible deaths that came because the Egyptians chose not to be involved with sacrifice. And they left. They went to their neighbors, and they said, hey, we're going to leave. Why don't you fund the trip? And their neighbors gave them food, and they gave them jewelry, gave them earrings and nose rings and bracelets. They funded all that, and it had been a pretty good couple of weeks for Israel. And they left heading east. Okay, so, and you've noticed the very last verse of chapter 13. It says, the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from the people. I mean, here they were. I mean, God beat the Egyptians. He's taking them to where he's promised they're going to go. It works. This is great. So then the Lord said to Moses, you notice we got revelation, direct revelation happening right here. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-Zephon. Don't know where that is. Can't find out. It's right about there. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. Now, this is what God says to Moses, right? Not to everybody, what God says to Moses. Here's why you're taking them to camp here, Moses. Verse 3, for Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they are wandering in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. They lost their compass. GPS is not working. And then verse 4, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. And they did so. Okay, so we're trying to put ourselves in the encampment of Israel. God positions us. He positions us through his word. Okay, I mean, it was direct revelation to Moses. This is the spot right here. And if they weren't quite sure where they should be, there was a pillar of cloud by day, pillar of fire by night. I mean, they knew that this was the spot. Now, you and I don't have the benefit of that direct revelation. A lot of times in my life, I wish I had been. I've had some really good leaders to follow in my life who, when they said, let's go here, I thought, well, you must know what you're doing, and I followed after you. But really, what I think we're meant to base our life on, and why there's an us in here, is because of what God said later through Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. You trust the Lord with all your heart, and you don't lean on your own way of thinking. In all your ways, you reflect back Him, you show you know Him, and He directs your path. He makes your way straight. So we're not going to get the direct revelation like God gave to Moses, but we do have the Bible. And often it's when we're following the Bible that we wind up in exactly the most difficult places. So there they are. They're sitting there. They are there because of His Word, and they are there because of His purposes. He told Moses exactly what He wanted to do. Now, God hardened Pharaoh's heart 9 times before this, the book of Exodus. And Pharaoh hardened his heart 9 times, 18 times that this precedes this. And what had happened was, hardening the heart is, this is what God says. I don't want to do it. That's it right there. This is what God says. I don't want to do it. God, through Moses, told Pharaoh what to do. That's what God says. Moses said, I don't want to do it. Or Pharaoh said, I don't want to do it. Eventually, God says, okay, you like it? You got it. This is the way you want to live? This is what you're getting. Now, I don't know if you want to picture God that way, but that is God. That is God. Obedience and disobedience, our choices are real. And it's clear all through the Bible that you and I can say, that's what God says, I don't want to do it. We have the choice to make. And eventually, in effect, it says, okay, fine. You got it. I will harden Pharaoh's heart, God says, His purposes. And He will pursue them, and I will gain glory. I'll be known as greater than Pharaoh and all his host. But more than that, the Egyptians will know the Lord. At this point, there was no other superpower in this part of the world. It was Egypt. And this little tiny nation, 2.5 million people, that did not have an organized system of government. They had the tribes. No organized system of government. No army. No weapons at this point. They had nothing. And God says, I'm going to gain glory over them through you. And the Egyptians will know that I'm the Lord. They'll find out something about who God is. I mentioned a minute ago that each one of those plagues was against one of the gods of Egypt. But here He says, you need to know me. And I'm going to use your people, Moses, to help those people learn some things they need to know. Well, that sounds very theological until it's my life. Okay? Until it's my life, until it's your life, until it's our life. I would like somebody else to be the lesson. Okay? I would like a very simple and easy life. I'd like somebody else to be the lesson. I've got a number of missionary heroes over the years who've encouraged me, and one of them was Amy Carmichael. And she spent her life serving Christ. And she said in one of her passages, she says, everywhere, the perpetual endeavor of the enemy of souls is discouragement. She went on to say, if he can get the soul, that's you and me, under the weather, he wins. It's not really what we go through that matters. It's what we go under that breaks us. We can bear anything if only we're kept inwardly victorious. And if God can make His birds to whistle in the drenched and stormy darkness, if He can make butterflies bear up under rain, what can He not do for the heart that trusts Him? Here are these people, fantastic few weeks, leaving Egypt, baskets full of goodies, following God. They're right by the sea. It's a nice resort location. And they have no idea what's about to happen. And in that setting, that's where God teaches us. Let's keep on reading. Find out what happened with them as they move forward. Verse 5, as expected, When the king of Egypt was told people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed, and they said, "What have we done? This was their cheap labor. This was their household help. This were their builders. This is, their national labor. What have we done? Who's going to do this? Now we've gotten rid of them." Verse 6, so he made ready his chariot and took his army with him and took 600 chosen chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, which he said he would do. And he pursued the people of Israel while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. Okay, that's us. Hey, we are the champions. Hum it to yourself. Here we're leaving Egypt. We beat the nation of Egypt. This is great. And someplace back there, there's a guy with an army who says, "I think horses are faster than feet. We're going to catch them." So, it says, verse 10, when Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians are marching after them. You can feel an army marching on the ground if there's enough of them. And they cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, verse 11, "Is it because there were no graves in Egypt? You've taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is this? We said this to you. Leave us alone so we can serve the Egyptians. Would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than die in the wilderness." And Moses said, "Fear not, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he'll work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you'll never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You only have to be silent." Okay, it's kind of shut up and listen. He teaches us by exposing our fears. I hate this. I hate this. Because when I get afraid, it's only because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm afraid of the future. And the first thing God does is peel the veneer off them and show what's really going on underneath. Now, there's a ton of stressful situations you can get into. College is one of them, okay? There's a ton of stressful situations you can get into that will hit the veneer that's over our lives and show what's happening behind the veneer. And this was theirs. That wasn't unreasonable. Mightiest army in the world. They had no way to fight them. I mean, it's not hard to see the future, right? You're sitting down having a cup of tea with your friends there in Israel. It's not hard to see the future. Here you are. You have no weapons. You have nothing at all. You're running out of bread. There's Pharaoh and the whole army. You're going back to Egypt in chains. I mean, that is the future. We have a lot of committees around here. Faculty, staff, we have a lot of committees around here. Committees are the way you get groups of people together to accomplish great things, if things go well for the committee. Otherwise, they may not work that way. We have great committees around here. I tried to imagine what the committee would be like to take care of the current Egyptian threat and who I would put on it. So they're all sitting there, they're talking about it. Okay, let's lay the situation out. Mightiest army in the world there. Weakest group of people in the world here. Military power, no military power. Ocean, the Red Sea there, the army there. This does not look good. They work through what the solutions might be. Okay, if some of us are going to be slaves, it probably ought to be the young, strong ones. We're going to take you guys, the faculty say. We're going to take you guys, and we're going to just have you just go. Go tell the Egyptians you made a mistake, your parents were stupid, never should have followed your parents. Here we are, take us back, we will work. And then the rest of us, we will stay safe. Fortunately, the committee would have members of the SLC on it. And the SLC would say, I don't think that's going to work. I really think that you older people should be an example for us. And that you should be the ones who go back out there and tell the Egyptians, we will go back to Egypt. Let the kids go and have fun, okay? They go back and forth. Undoubtedly, somebody would say, hey, the bracelets we got from the Egyptian army, what if we like did Frisbee with them? Throw them out there so they bounce on the ground. And the chariot wheels couldn't get across there, and they'd be hot, and the Egyptian army guys would burn their feet on them, and they'd run back home, and that wouldn't go very far. Somebody would probably say, I got an idea. How about like back when we were in Egypt, we could send Moses over there to the sea, and we could have Moses take that staff of his and open sea. Stupidest suggestion of all. I mean, really, it's the stupidest suggestion of all. I mean, they send that guy out for coffee. Go do a sheets run while we try to solve this problem, okay? But that's what God did. After he exposes our fears, he shows us who he is. He shows us who he is. He said, I'm going to take you to what we call Israel, Palestine. He'd already said that. He said, park here, stop here, enjoy the oceanfront view, sea view. Okay, he's going to show us who he is. So let's pick it up in verse 16. 15, I guess. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people to go forward. Well, go forward where? It's the sea in front of them. Lift up the staff, stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through it on dry ground. And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, so they will go in after them, and I'll get glory over Pharaoh, and over all his host, and his chariots, and his horsemen. Okay? And the Egyptians shall know that I'm the Lord, when I've gotten that glory. So then the angel of the Lord, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them. Pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night without one coming near the other. Light on one side so Israel can see, dark on the other so Egypt can't. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove it back by a strong east wind all night, made the sea land dry, must have been quite a wind. Waters were divided. People of Israel went to the midst of the sea on dry ground, waters being a wall, and it's the word for wall, like in a house. A wall on their left or their right. Egyptians pursued them, went in after them, we find out in the morning, and it didn't work out as well for them. So, he shows us who he is. And he meets our needs. Now, the dealing with the current Egyptian problem committee was surprised by the outcome of this. And I hope the guy who we sent down to Sheets to get the coffee so we could solve the problem was back in time to see what God was doing. Because this didn't just happen. Okay? This wasn't something Moses practiced. There's an old Far Side cartoon that shows Moses as a child where he's splitting the milk in his glass. I mean, he wasn't practicing this when he was a kid. Hey, I can solve this. I split seas. This was from God. It was not anticipated. And they went through this. What you and I need in our lives that we don't want to gain the experience to have is finding out what God can do. When God is interested in giving us the opportunity to show other people who he is. We don't want the experience of saying, I never expected that, because our fears were exposed and our weaknesses were exposed in the process of getting to that spot. And that's what happened. He used Moses' rod. Angel of the Lord protected them. He sent a wind that created that path in the sea. Wasn't what we expected. But it was what he did. A little over a century ago, 1914, this went up all around London. Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. Ernest Shackleton, who you will get a chance to meet one of these days if you're born again. He is a brother in Christ. He is in heaven now. So Ernest Shackleton wanted to go down and find the South Pole. He needed 27 people to go with him on his little boat, the Endurance, to do this. It was 1914. 5,000 people signed up. I have no idea how he chose them. 5,000 people signed up. And they went down to the South Pole, and things went okay for a while until that. Shackleton made a bad choice and decided to stay at a spot, and the ice closed in. That really is the Endurance. I didn't check this morning before I came in. I meant to. It used to be that the National Geographic had a movie about this, and it was on Netflix. So we can check that out later. And because that was the 19 teens, there were movies then. And so these guys took pictures. They were playing soccer on the ice, having fun with the dogs, and they're waiting for something to melt, and nothing was melting. This is Antarctica. And so eventually they started to get concerned because the ice crushed the Endurance. They got some sleds off, they got some boats off, and they got some provisions off, and they started to head for where there should be open sea. Decided they wanted to go to Elephant Island. They made it to Elephant Island. It's shaped like an elephant. There were no elephants there. It's very cold. And it was not in the sea lanes. And so they realized that no one's going to come to rescue them. So Shackleton and two other guys, well, four other guys actually, Shackleton and four other guys decide we are going to go down to the whaling station on South Georgia Island, 800 miles through some of the worst seas on the planet. And they made it. They got there. But because of the winds, they wound up on the opposite end of the island from where the whaling station was. And they couldn't get there. So Shackleton decides that he and two of the guys that were on the boat with him, is him and his first mate and one of the crewmen, that they are going to climb the cliff and they're going to go across the glaciers in the island and they're going to find the whaling station because they're afraid if they wait for a favorable wind, then they might lose the rest of the crew back there on Elephant Island. People who lived there said that what Shackleton did couldn't be done. And he did it in 36 hours. The march in 36 hours, got the whaling station. He had told the crew, you're all going to live. I don't know how he knew that, but he told, and saved them all. Let me read you a couple of sentences out of his diary. He said, I know that during that long and racking march of 36 hours over the unnamed mountains of South Georgia, it seemed to me often there were 4, not 3. I said nothing to my companions. But afterward, Worsley, his chief mate, Worsley said to me, Boss, I had a curious feeling there was another person with us. Now, if we were to start with Dr. Slusser and count off like we did in 2nd grade in gym class, and go all around the room until we got to whatever our last number was here, and if we counted everyone and did it right, we wouldn't have an accurate count because there's one more person in the room that we don't think about a lot because God is just as really here as you and I are really here. He is. But we count ourselves off. We have X hundred people here. We're fine. That's what Israel had done. They forgot that there was somebody else there. That's what I do. I forget that there's somebody else here. It's not just me. It's not just us. There's a God who has purposes which he's told us about. And he's just as much here as you and me. So you keep on reading the story and you find out that things did not go well for the Egyptians. The ESV kind of covers it up. And in the way it says it says that verse 24, in the morning watch, 6 to 9 a.m., the Lord in the pillar of fire and cloud looked on the Egyptians and threw their forces into a panic. He says, clogging their chariot wheels so they drove heavily. The text says he took off their chariot wheels, right? I don't care how nice a car you have, take the wheels off, it doesn't drive the same as it did when you had the wheels on it. And so here are these guys, they're stuck. And then it says in verse 27, Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The sea returned to its normal course when the morning appeared. And as the Egyptians fled with the Lord through the Egyptians amidst the sea. Waters returned, covered the chariots and the horsemen, all the host of Pharaoh that followed in the sea. Not one of them remained. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead in the seashore. They saw the great power of the Lord he used against them. So the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and his servant Moses. So he exposes our fears. He puts us right where he wants us to be. And then he teaches us while we're there, often giving us lessons we wish we didn't have, but that we needed anyway. He teaches us. And then he develops us, because the next day, they were different people than they had been the day before. We can't do anything. and we spoke out against our leader. We spoke out against Moses. You're the one who got us to the wrong place. We told you we shouldn't come. We trusted you. And look, we're all going to lose our lives or go back into slavery. They totally forgot there was a God, a pillar of cloud and pillar of fire. I mean, like, who had a better idea they were in the will of God than these people, right? I got no pillar of cloud or fire. They did. And they just threw all of that away. But God used the process to change them. They saw the great power, in verse 31, the Lord used against the Egyptians. So they feared the Lord, and they believed the Lord and his servant Moses. Trust in our capabilities becomes trust in God's purposes. We want to do what he wants to do and not do what he doesn't. That's what fearing the Lord is. And fear of our circumstances gets turned into fear of God. Now, every single one of us, no matter who the youngest is here or who the oldest is here, we're all in a developmental process, spiritually with God. We're all there. That's what God is doing with us. And in that sense, we are kin to these people. It's the same process. Every time God throws a new curve at me, I feel the same way. Oh no, I can't solve this. As good as the staff who I work with is, they can't solve it either. We're done. There's no way out of this. Egyptians on one side, sea on the other. Any person with a grain of common sense could tell that we're done for. Fear of circumstances. But God works in those circumstances. Here's my other missionary hero. Put that up there and then listen to her. Gladys Aylward, British missionary, working in China, doing what we call social justice work. Okay, she's taking care of orphans. Just before World War II, in the decade before World War II, the Japanese Empire was moving out of Japan, trying to conquer as much of the East there as they could. And they came into China. And they wanted to get rid of foreign influence there. And so they knew about this British missionary lady who had the orphanage, and they were coming for her. And so she decided to take the orphans, 100 of them, right? 100 kids. Decided to take the orphans and head off into the mountains where maybe the Japanese army couldn't find her. It's like, 100 orphans off to the mountains. What could possibly go wrong with a plan like this? And so, she takes off. And it didn't take long before, the army was advancing on her. And she thought she was done for. And the account is that one of the young teen girls in the orphanage, one of those girls came to Auntie Gladys and reminded her that she had recently been teaching them this very passage in the book of Exodus we're talking about. But she was a realist and said to that little girl, I am no Moses. And this was the little girl's response. But God is still God. And as you and I go through the centrifuge of life, it's spinning way too fast for us, and we're getting crowded down there in the bottom part of the tube. Okay? And we're trying to figure all this out, and we would just like a little bit more answer, a little bit more assurance from God, a little bit something to help our flesh feel better about the situation we're in. Rather than go and do something stupid. Well, I guess I'll take charge of the universe on my own. Not a good plan. Rather than do something stupid, we've got to think about the fact that the God who always has been, the God who has always worked in people's life, the God who always has plans to make us like Jesus, that God is as much here in this room as you are. He's as much at the side of the problem as you are. His plans are as great as yours are small. The difficulty is that we can't ever get a drone shot of the maze. We can't ever get a shot that says, oh, wait a minute, we got to turn left here and then we turn right twice. No wonder we're lost here. We can't ever get the drone shot. All we can do is find out what God says and do it. find out what applies to our situation, and do it. You say, well, that sounds really simple. It's meant to be. Love God, keep His commandments. That's it. And if you and I do that, we'll still have no shortage of terrifying times in life. What we will have is the work of God on our behalf, making us like His Son. Let's pray. Lord, we came here this morning because we believe that You're the only true God and Your word is the only truth there is. And if we don't get it put together right, we're never going to get out of the messes we find ourselves in. And so I ask You to work on behalf of our students, our staff, and our faculty, problems large and small. Give them the grace, Lord, to turn to Your word instead of to themselves, not to live out the weakness of their flesh, but to find out what Your truth is and follow You. And we would pray for Your mighty work. And some of these students, Lord, are going home in a couple of weeks to families that don't like them and don't like You. I would ask that You would grace and strengthen them to speak truth and share love. Some folks in this room, Lord, are in relationships that they can't figure a way out of, and they know they don't want to be there. Bring Your word to mind. Allow them to follow it. Grace them to go where they should go. There's some people here who have financial needs, physical needs that are far beyond anything that they could ever take care of. And we would like to see Your work in those situations and their lives too. And we thank You for being just as much in the room as we are. And we want to follow You. We ask You to lead us in Jesus' name. Amen. See you later.